So here's the deal. The issue of what Tulsi Gabbard came out and said today, all that she's exposed, I want to make this very clear. I do not believe this is to distract us from Jeffrey Epstein. And I still want answers on Jeffrey Epstein. And I still believe Republicans need to provide answers on Jeffrey Epstein, lest they look like the party that's covering for Jeffrey Epstein. But it does not change the fact that what Tulsi Gabbard is saying today is very, very serious. But the media is out there today saying, and I even have a clip, that this is all a distraction from Jeffrey Epstein. No, it's not. It's not a distraction. It's that the truth is coming out. It's that the truth always comes out. When you have dedicated people to the truth and you don't have deep state hacks who like war. Bottom line. That's it. That's just the bottom line. Deep state hacks who like war. If you'd had a different person in there than Tulsi Gabbard, this may not be coming out today. So let me begin with the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Irrefutable evidence. And she's got the evidence, and she's got the receipts, and she's showing all this for us today. So weigh in, 855-839-1210, on X, at Rich Zeoli. We're also streaming live on YouTube. We had a little video issue, but we're back now, so weigh in on the comments section as well. But let's start with Tulsi, cut number 3.
At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified oversight majority staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice.
Yeah, they do. Accountability, the truth, and justice, and the American way. And this is not the American way, okay? It's not. And she goes on to talk about the House report, which was declassified today, and how the House report details the evidence here. All right, so again, this is not just throwing this out there. We have the receipts, cut number 4.
The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems,
That's my
uncontrolled
favorite.
fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
Tranquilizers.
Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump.
Now let's understand this, okay? she was on tranquilizers. She was nuts, and Russia knew all this stuff about her. So if they wanted her elected, wouldn't they have put this stuff out? The answer is yes. Of course they would have. Of course they would have. In fact, in this House Intelligence report that came out on page 17, it really goes into some detail about this too. Page 17 of the declassified House Intelligence Committee report reveals that Russia had huge amounts of potential anti-Clinton dirt, and they sat on it. Internal claims that Hillary was on heavy tranquilizers and suffering intensified psycho-emotional problems. Evidence of severe health ailments like type 2 diabetes and ischemic heart disease. Internal DNC communications that Obama and others found Hillary's health extraordinarily alarming. Evidence of secret meetings with religious leaders where Clinton offered significant increases in funding from the State Department in return for their support. Internal Democrat admissions that European allies were unenthusiastic about a Clinton presidency and thought she was not up to the job of head of state. So if Russia was really all in on getting Trump elected, they would have dropped all this dirt on Hillary Clinton. Obviously. Obviously they would have done that. Because then it would have helped Trump. But they didn't. She was on tranquilizers. She was on freaking heavy tranquilizers. Like elephant tranquilizers. Caroline Leavitt called this today the biggest political scandal, and it is the biggest political scandal. Here's the White House press secretary beginning the press briefing today, part number 1.
Over the past few days, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has unveiled shocking new evidence that former President Barack Obama and top aides in the Obama administration conspired to subvert President Trump's 2016 election victory and undermine the democratic will of the American people. While publicly pretending to engage in a peaceful transfer of power, in private, former President Obama went to great and nefarious lengths to try to sow discord among the public and sabotage his successor, President Trump. The new evidence released by the Director of National Intelligence, who is here with me today, confirms that the Obama administration manufactured politicized intelligence, which was later used as the justification for baseless smears against President Trump in an effort to try to delegitimize his victory before he even took the oath of office. The truth is that President Trump never had anything to do with Russia, and the Russia collusion hoax was a massive fraud perpetuated on the American people from the very beginning. And the worst part of this is Obama knew that truth, and so did all of the other corrupt officials involved in this scam, including former CIA Director John Brennan, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, former FBI Director James Comey, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and many others. Director of National Intelligence Gabbard's report further confirms what we already knew. There was no collusion, no corruption, except on the part of Barack Obama and the weaponized intelligence agencies at the time. The Russia hoax was a blatant lie, all ginned up by Democrat political operatives that were signed off on by then President Obama and leaked to the news media to launch a years-long witch hunt against President Trump and his first administration. Allies of the president, including his own son, Donald Trump Jr., were disgustingly smeared as Russian assets, and some even had their lives destroyed because of this vicious lie. The president's first 2 years in office had this fake distraction hanging over it, and endless resources, time, and political capital were spent having to debunk these lies from the highest levels of our government. Now, nearly 10 years later, thanks to the declassification of documents by Director Gabbard, the truth has finally come to light. And this truth vindicates President Trump, his family, and his many allies and associates who were smeared with defamatory lies.
Yeah, okay. So let's think about Hillary Clinton in 2016. A warmonger. A total freaking warmonger. And how many Republicans were secretly hoping she'd win? Let's be honest. Just like, come on. First of all, the polls show that she had a 99.99% chance of winning. And when people were out there saying Trump's going to win, they're like, you're crazy. The Republican Party did not accept him. The Republican Party did not want him. The Republican Party rejected him at every turn. And it's because he was not going to be the guy who was going to allow more wars to start. And they didn't start. For 4 years, we went through a period of time, we didn't have any new wars. So then Hillary Clinton loses, and they're all shocked by this because they thought she was going to win. And they figured, Hillary will play ball because the Clintons play ball. It's what they do. The Clintons play ball. Let's be honest. It's what they do. People would get rich. The swamp will get rich. The steaks at the Capitol Grill would be coming out. The wine would be served. I mean, all of it. Nothing would change. Everybody would be fine. Everybody would be happy. And Republicans could go on about yelling about the Clintons again. And everything would have been fine. Trump wins, shocks everybody. Nobody expected him to win. I mean, I did, but a lot. The conventional wisdom at the time, based on the polling, was that he was going to lose. The reason why all this comes out in 2017 is because all these people then turn around and go, holy S, what do we do now? What do we do? We got this guy in the White House now coming in as president. And the swamp turns around and goes, we're not going to get our wars. We're not going to make our money. We're not going to. I mean, he's coming after us. He's been screaming about draining the swamp and the deep state and everything else. And what do? So they sit around and they do a Wonder Twins powers activate form of Russian collusion. And they create Russian collusion in January of 2017, December of 2017. It's after the election that all of this is put together for a reason. Because otherwise you'd just have a transition. You'd have a normal transition. I mean, if it had been if Jeb Bush was going into office, you know what I mean? Like if Jeb Bush was going into office and the Russians had tried to do whatever the Russians had tried to do by putting bots out or whatever else that the Russians were ineffective at doing, they never would have done any of this stuff. They would have been fine with him. Oh, great, Jeb's coming in! Exclamation mark. Jeb will give us what we need. Everybody's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. But the swamp, the deep state, was stuck with a guy who, very much like if Rand Paul was going into office, we're going to end these endless wars. That was a big tenet of his campaign, a big tenet of why he won. And so they had to stop him. It wasn't personal. I mean, at one point, Donald Trump was friends with all these people. At one point, he was friends with the Clintons. I mean, the reason why all this Epstein stuff keeps coming up and all these pictures of him and Trump are together is because Epstein was in powerful circles and Trump was in powerful circles and the Clintons were in powerful circles. And the powerful circles were all the powerful people. And they used to like Donald Trump back then. They'd take his money. They'd go to Mar-a-Lago. They'd hang out with the guy. They'd party it up with him. He was fine. He was part of the club. It was only until he decided he was going to run for president and he was not going to give them their wars anymore that suddenly the guy that they were all friends with, who they happily took his checks for years and years and years, it was them that they suddenly had to stop this guy and create this narrative and this psychological operation that he was this Russian plant to try to undermine him and weaken him and ultimately cripple his presidency. But if it had been Jeb, they would have been fine. It would have been a nice transition, happy high-fiving. I mean, even putting in swamp creatures around Trump in the White House didn't help with that because they ultimately knew that he's not going to listen to them. He's not going to listen to the swamp. He's not going to listen to the warmongers. He had to be stopped. Any other Republican would have been fine for the most part. It would have been fine, business as usual, and fine, and everything's fine. You know, like if Nikki Haley had won that election, the Democrats would have been ready to gear up and do their usual stuff, but they wouldn't be planting and manufacturing intelligence to suggest that she's a Russian agent who only got elected because of Vladimir Putin, because Nikki Haley would be she'd play the game. It's not personal. It's just business. And you're making it very personal. I mean, everything in life I learned from The Godfather. It's not like they really didn't like Trump. And don't give me the whole, like, oh, he's too boorish for them. Bill Clinton had sex with an intern in the Oval Office with a cigar. it was never about that. Trump's behavior, the NBC tape, the grab them by the blank. They don't care about that stuff. They didn't care about it then. They don't care about it now. It was always about stopping him because he was not going to play their little warmonger games. Don't doubt me on this.